So the fall is a really busy time as your student works to finalize the admissions process while also having probably their most rigorous schedule that they've had to date, as well as all of their extracurricular activities. Now, the counselors are here to help your student with the application process and answer any questions that you or your student may have. We're always happy to answer your questions as well as your students. We do like it when the students initiate contact with us and kind of take the lead in this process for themselves, especially since they're going to be leaving home in a few short months. But we are always happy to meet with you and answer your questions as well. So while the counselors can help with a lot of the technical aspects of this process, there are a few things that we simply can't do, and that's where you as the parents come into play. And what your student really needs right now, the most help with, I think, is, of course, finalizing those visits, getting back onto those campuses, and the financial aid process. So fall is a great time to get out there and visit the college campuses. They have a lot of opportunities out there, and by visiting those campuses, it will really help your student to solidify their final list of schools. The visit actually is one of the most important parts of this process, because being able to step onto the campus provides your student with an opportunity to really gain a better sense of whether or not that school is a good fit for them. Can they see themselves spending the next 4 years at this school? And so as they look to finalize this list of school, the visit is key. And it really will help to bring some clarity to this process. Now, Naviance is a great tool. We'll be, going over some aspects of it tonight with you as well. And so as your student is finalizing their list of schools they'll be applying to, it's really important that they add the schools to Naviance, and then they review the admissions data for each of their schools. So the data in Naviance will help you and your student really assess their list for balance. And what we're going to be encouraging students to do is to make sure they, of course, have a couple reaches, because you're not going to get in if you don't apply. We're primarily looking for mostly realistic schools and then a few safety schools. It's important to have an academic safety as well as possibly a financial safety. So as parents, it's important that you start having those financial conversations with your students early on in the process. Linda Hutchins is going to speak briefly about financial aid later on in the presentation, but you can help your student right now by having those conversations and being realistic in what you as a family can contribute to your student's education. So again, as parents, how you can really help right now is by getting out there and finishing up visiting those campuses. Sitting down with your student and utilizing some of the data in Naviance to help them to balance their list, all right? Because there are a lot of great schools out there, and there's a great school for your student. So making sure that you're balancing those lists and having those conversations about the finances, and then beginning to complete the financial aid process for your student. Now, your student should be able to work pretty independently on the application process. The counselors have been doing workshops. We actually did the workshops last week with students, and we went through the entire process that we're going to share with you tonight with your students. Now, on a side note, when we're talking about balancing list and looking at the data in Naviance, the GPA for the seniors has been updated in Naviance. Now, the GPA that is currently in there is the GPA that's going to be reported to colleges, and it includes final grades for every course your student has taken in grades 9 through 11. Now, we don't recalculate the GPA again until after they graduate. However, what we will do is we will be sending off term 1 and possibly term 2 grades, depending how your student is applying, whether they're applying early or regular admissions. And the colleges, bless you, Jason, and the colleges themselves will factor in those term grades into the overall decision that they're making in regards to your student, okay? Okay, so as with every presentation, we give you a workbook. There's a lot of great information in there, and we will kind of walk you through all of that. And each and every one of our workbooks offers a timeline. You can look at that later on. It highlights a lot of dates and deadlines. You're going to hear, you and your students will hear a lot about dates and deadlines over the next couple months. A couple things to note are that we have a financial aid night next Wednesday, September 27th at 6:30. We're going to have a representative from MEFA joining us. That's the Massachusetts Education Finance Authority, and they are really experts in the financial aid process. And so they're going to share all of their knowledge with you. You'll get an opportunity to ask questions related to the financial aid process. We're also on Wednesday, October 4th from 6 to 8. We're going to be hosting our annual college fair. We currently have over 90 schools registered to come, so we're looking forward to that. That's always a great opportunity to, make contact once again with the local reps for our school. Okay? All right. So I'm gonna just touch base briefly. Students and parents often have questions about who sends what. So I thought I would just go over that very quickly. And, so what is the student responsible for? Well, of course, they're responsible for completing their application and submitting their application. And one of the things that we've been trying to drive home to the students during the workshops and meetings is not to wait to the last minute, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. God forbid, a tree goes down, your power goes out, you don't have Wi-Fi, something happens, right? And you're here on the 31st at like 11 p.m. having a complete meltdown. So we're really trying to encourage the students to pace themselves out and give themselves a few extra days before the deadline, all right? So they're going to be responsible for submitting their applications, of course, paying their application fees. If a school has a supplement, they will also have to submit that in addition to the application. And we're going to go back over that because we will jump into the Common App and we'll walk you through the Common App and point all of that out to you. In addition, it's the student's responsibility to make sure if they are going to be reporting test scores, that they send the test scores from the testing agency. So if they're going to send their SATs, they need to go into their College Board account and request that those scores be sent directly to their colleges. The same with the ACT. Now, the students at this time do not need to officially send AP scores. They can self-report those AP scores, and again, we'll go over that when we talk about the Common App. They'll self-report AP scores, and then once they decide which school they're going to attend, then they can go ahead and send official AP scores to their college, okay? And then we'll go over activities in the Common App, and if they have additional activities, they can maybe submit a resume. Or if their major requires a portfolio, then they're responsible for submitting that, all right? So they have to make sure that they've submitted everything, they've followed all of the directions, but then once they submit, they also have to keep their eye out for communications from the school. So the school will be emailing your student and giving them directions on how to open up their portal. And you'd be surprised at the number of times that students miss this step. And they might be saying, hey, look, we haven't received your scores yet. They might need some additional information from your student. And they've completely missed the email and completely missed setting up their portal. So keep an eye out for that and make sure that your student is following the directions as outlined from the school. Okay, so what does guidance send? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to send a course transcripts, grades, right? We have a school profile that tells our the colleges about Algonquin. Of course, many of the area reps have worked with our school for several years, so they're very familiar with Algonquin, but we still outline Algonquin as a school. We'll do a secondary school report. We'll have our counselor recommendations. We'll send term 1 grades, mid-year grades, and then ultimately come June, we'll send a final transcript to wherever your student is going to be attending, all right? And the teachers, they will be submitting their teacher recommendations separately. So they too have Naviance accounts, And your students in the workshops have been instructed on how to request a teacher recommendation through Naviance, and many of them have completed that task, and that notifies the teacher, and it actually puts your student into the teacher's Naviance account. And so the teacher will then do the Common App teacher evaluation form, and they will upload their letter of recommendation, and they'll submit those directly to the college. Okay, so that's a quick little overview. I just simplified the whole process right there in like 5 minutes. So easy, you guys got it. We can call it a night, right? But that just simplifies a complicated process, right? But rest assured, I mean, I don't even know, we have so many counselors with so many experience. Even Cindy's coming in with, over 10 years experience from Ohio. So we've done this over and over again. All right, and we will make sure that you and your student get through this process successfully. All right, so at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Andrea Hodgkin, and she's going to talk a little bit about scores and testing.
All right. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. So last spring, we spoke a lot about tests, right? The SAT, the ACT. At this point, a lot of students have taken at least one of those tests. I do know there are several students signed up for the upcoming October exam. It'll be great to see them there. I will be a proctor. But at this point now, what do students do? At first, they need to make a decision now. Do they want those scores considered as part of their admissions process? And I say that because there are still so many test optional schools. A lot of schools, I would say over 1,900 actually, four-year colleges and universities are actually test optional for this year's applicants. Some colleges still may require scores, but the majority are not requiring them as admissions. So a common question I get is, well, if I'm applying to all these test optional schools, does it make sense to even send my scores? In the end, what's best is going to vary on a case-by-case basis, and that's where your student's individual counselor, we can help with that. In general, though, what I always say is if the student has scores at or above the average for the most recent incoming class, sending those scores could strengthen the student's application. What I usually say is look at the mid 50% range, and that's something you can find online for the schools to determine whether that makes sense to send scores. So if a student does want their scores considered as part of their application, as Lisa said, it is their responsibility to send those scores. I'm going to be talking about two different types of scores. Official scores is what Lisa talked about. Those are those official scores that have to come directly from the testing agency, so that would be done through College Board or ACT. And of course, there is a fee for that because they continue to charge for everything, right? So for College Board, it is going to be $14 per school for SAT scores to be sent. For ACT, it's actually $18.50 per school. So obviously, this is starting to add up. Before you start spending that money, though, I would encourage you to look at the college websites because you're going to find this more and more common that schools are allowing students to self-report their scores. And from a college perspective, what I was finding, I was doing a little research on this because I actually met with a student yesterday who's applying to 10 schools. She has really strong scores, so she wants to send her SAT to 10 schools. So really, that would be $140. We went through all 10 schools, and none of them required her to send the officials. It's saying that she can self-report those scores. So you can save a lot of money that way. So as I was looking at, really it was saying that colleges are doing this more because, one, it helps students complete their applications sooner and more efficiently, but it's also removing those barriers associated with the cost and the processing time of sending scores with the application. Because there is a delay between paying to have your scores sent and actually having them sent. So in a case like this, if a student does self-report their scores, what they're going to be doing is at the end, when they finally decide where they're going to be going, they will be required to send their official scores to that school before they enroll. So instead of spending $140, my student yesterday, she's like, actually, I can just spend $14 at the end, which, she can take care of that in June. So before you start spending all that money, take a look, because you're going to see more and more schools are doing that. I did have a student in a workshop ask me, well, what if I say I have a 1600? And I said, well, there's a problem, because one, I know you got a 1080, and two, you have to send those scores. And as any college will tell you, all acceptances are conditional. In terms of test scores, if you were to self-report scores and there was a discrepancy between your scores and then what the school receives officially at the end of, before you start school, admissions can be revoked, okay? So they do have a little check and balance there. All right, so now though, let's say the student is going to send their official scores. There is a timeline we have in your workbook for them to follow, and that's going to be on page 4 of your workbook. Near the bottom, you're going to see 2 different timelines. There's a timeline for students who are applying early to schools, early action, early decision. Those deadlines are typically around November 1st. A lot of southern schools are moving towards October 15 as early. But we do have, if you are applying early and you are sending your scores, you might as well go ahead right now, get onto that College Board or ACT account and pay to have those scores sent if you want them to be the official scores. As I mentioned, there's a lot of people taking the October 7th SAT. College Board does allow students to select 4 schools to have their reports sent to for free, but that's part of the registration. So those are called registration credits. They expire 9 days after a student takes the exam. So if a student does want to wait and look at their scores, which I think most students really do want to evaluate their scores before even deciding, do I send them? Those scores are expected to be released October 20th. So as I mentioned, there is a delay in the amount of time it takes from scores to be sent. So I would say make a decision within that day or so if you're going to be sending those October scores, all right? Now, I know there are test dates late October. There's an ACT. There's also an early November SAT. If you have a student who is going to be applying early to colleges, those scores aren't going to be ready until later. So it's going to be important for your student to reach out to those colleges and ask, I'm taking this test in late October. Will you accept those scores after the fact? Okay, so that is just if they have an early deadline, but they're taking some of those later tests. The regular decision candidates, usually those start around January 1st, so it's not a rush to have those scores sent now, but it is one thing you could just be proactive, take care of it. Once a school starts receiving anything with that student's name, they start a file, okay? So let's say Dave Breglio is applying to school. Let's say we send his test scores, they get there, and then he doesn't apply for 2 months. That's fine. The scores just sit there, and then when he applies, they add it to that, okay? So on page 5 of the workbook, you probably did see there are some dates for upcoming tests if you do have students who want to take any additional exams this fall. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up here, and Cindy Nelson is going to walk us through how transcripts are actually sent to colleges, and we're going to be getting onto Naviance.
All right, so as Lisa mentioned, one of the things the school will be doing is sending the transcript, and that's obviously a very important part of the admission review process, so it's important that it gets there and it gets to the school on time and gets to the right school. So we're going to be walking through the Naviance process for doing that. Naviance is a tool that the counselors use that we can electronically send the school materials to the colleges. So that's something that we went through with students last week in the college workshop or the senior workshops. So your student does know how to do this. They have a workbook as well, but we're going to walk through that with you as well so that you know how to do that. So from the main website, you're going to go to guidance, and then go to Naviance, sign in with your login. Do a fun puzzle. We got in. spending, Pam and I are going to be talking a lot about the college tab tonight. So last spring, you were focused probably on the colleges I'm thinking about. So hopefully your student has some colleges in that thinking about column. So that's where I'm going to focus a little bit of time on tonight of how to move colleges from that I'm thinking about to I'm applying to. So if you want to select University of Massachusetts Amherst, so you're going to click on that box to the, I guess, right-hand side, and then click up there to the Move to Application list. So this is where you're going to select a deadline, and this is really important. You're going to see with the various colleges that your student's applying to, all schools have various deadlines. There are some common ones. You know, November 1 is a common early action deadline that you're going to see. October 15th is a common one for some schools in the South. And then regular decision is usually in a early January deadline. But it's really important that you know which deadline your student is applying by, because we are going to go by that deadline to make sure all the school materials get there by that deadline. So you're going to select the deadline. The student's going to indicate, are they using the Common Application or are they submitting a school application? I'm going to show you in a minute how you can decide which way you need to do that. But for this one, we're going to say Common App. Again, you're going to say, are you sending your test scores or not? Do your best guess at this point. Like if you say no, but you end up sending test scores, that's okay. But do your best guess to indicate what you think you're going to be doing. And then hit Add and Request Transcripts. You're selecting initial, so this is the initial transcript that has the grades through the end of junior year. So at this point, obviously we don't have first semester grades or first quarter grades, so it's just the initial transcript. All right, so now UMass Amherst has been added to the colleges that I'm applying to. So now you can see requested and pending for the transcript. So the goal throughout this process is making sure that the list that you see under colleges I'm applying to matches what's in the Common Application or in your students' list of schools that they're applying to. If they have some additional schools that are not Common Application schools, making sure all of the schools are in Naviance and have a requested transcript with the deadline that your student's applying by, okay? So you'll see there the little computer. So anything that has like the CA with a line through it means they do not accept the Common Application. So that school has their own application on their website that your student would need to apply through. If they have a computer with the CA, that means Common Application. So that does mean that they accept the Common Application. And nothing, again, means their own application that they use. Yep. All right. I think that's the main things. Anything else? Yeah. All right. Well, Pam will talk some more.
Hey everybody, my name's Pam Mackey. I'm going to be covering recommendations, deadlines, which you're going to hear a lot about, and then college visits that we're offering here at Algonquin. So as part of the application, we are going to be writing recommendations for the students, and the teachers are also going to be writing recommendations. So in order to streamline that process, what we've done is we're providing forms for the students and for you to fill out so that we can write them the best possible recommendation. So on the homepage of Naviance, you can see over on the right, there's a spot there that has all of the recommendation forms on it. You'll see the guidance counselor recommendation form, and that form asks details about the student's major, work experience, extracurricular activities, and if they've had any special circumstances while they've been at Algonquin that they want us to discuss. All students have to fill this out to get a recommendation. It's very important. We spend a lot of time on these letters, and we want them to be the best that they possibly can. So we really ask that they spend a lot of time on it. We don't want, 10 pages, but we'll take 3 pages, of thoughtful paragraph. There's also a spot on here for the parent brag sheet. So sometimes students won't mention everything that they've done, and that's where your help comes in. So if you could actually go on, it's going to ask questions about your child's proudest accomplishment, their growth and development, and also any additional information that you would like to include. So we thank you ahead of time for filling those out. There's also a resume on here. So it's very helpful for us to also have an activities list or a resume. We have a template up here. I've already had a student use it, and they filled it out, and I reviewed it with them today. And it's just a really easy kind of fill-in-the-blank template for them. So we ask students to share this information with us 20 school days prior. I'm going to say that a couple times. I'm going to cover deadlines in a little bit, but it is important that we have enough time to write and process these recommendations. So last May, we discussed teacher recommendations with students. And at that point, we told them that they could go ahead and ask a teacher for a recommendation. If your child has not yet asked a teacher for a letter, please have them come see us. We can help them identify a teacher that they can ask and kind of get that ball rolling with them. So there's a teacher recommendation form on here, and that it really includes your child's, in the class, your child's best moment academically, their favorite topic, maybe a strength that they had in the class, and maybe a challenge that they had in the class. We ask students to email the teacher ahead of time to set up a convenient time when they can bring a printed out copy of this recommendation form to the teacher and answer any questions that they might have, or if there's any additional information that the teacher may want. So in order for teachers to send the recommendations, they have their own Naviance account. So we're going to go through a quick step-by-step with you that we covered with the students on how students need to go in and then request the teacher. So the first thing you need to do is go to the College tab and click on Letters of Recommendation under Apply to Colleges. All right, and we're going to go to Add Request. And in the drop-down box, the student's going to select the teacher that's writing for them. So we're going to go ahead. Are we going with Mr. Alera? Okay, so we're going to choose Mr. Alera. And we're indicating that he is going to be our general request. So that means that he's our primary letter, and he's going to be sending to all of the colleges that we are applying to. Our second letter is Mr. Berry. And we are going to choose him as our specific request. So if you only want a teacher to send a recommendation to specific schools instead of all the colleges, this is where you would choose specific request. This is also especially important if the college only takes one letter. So if you look up, you can actually see Villanova, for example, will only accept one letter of recommendation. And we're putting Mr. Alera in as the general, so that's going to go to Villanova, and Mr. Berry's is going to go to the rest of the schools that accept 2 or more recommendations. Okay. On the bottom, there's a spot for students to put a little note, and we're just recommending that the students say, hi, Mr. Alera, thank you so much for writing my letter. I'm going to email you separately and come see you to set up a time to talk about the recommendation form. It's important that the students include their first deadline so that the teachers are aware of when they need to get the letter in. And then at the bottom, they just click Submit Request. So that is teacher rec and counselor rec. Deadlines. All right, so there's the external deadlines that the colleges have, that November 1, that October 15 for the southern schools, the regular decision deadline. We have internal deadlines here at Algonquin. We want the students to keep in mind that we're processing over 50 letters for students in all the colleges that they're applying to, and we'll be writing all of these letters. And again, we spend a lot of time on them. So we just want to make sure that we have enough time to sit with the students, review, all of their college materials, their recommendation forms, their common application. So we ask for a minimum of 20 schools days notice prior to the college application deadline in order to get the request and process everything on time. The same deadlines also apply for these teachers. So if you go to page 9 of the workbook, and I actually had kids going into their phones and setting reminders for this when we did workshops. November 1st, we need those recommendation forms for teachers, guidance counselors, the resume or activity sheet, and if you guys would do the parent brag sheet, we would like that by Tuesday, October 3rd. So that's around the corner. Or October 15, kids we've already talked to already. That deadline was Thursday. And then you can see, the rest of them. January 1 isn't until Monday, November 27th, but because of some of the holidays, these deadlines come up a little bit more quickly. So we just ask that you be cognizant of those, because that helps us out a lot with getting all of our information in. All right. So we have a number of colleges that come in and meet with our students. I'm going to show you right now how students are signing up for college visits. We also cover this with them in our one-on-one meetings. One of the first things I do with kids is when they sit down, I say, well, have you signed up for any of these college visits? These are a great opportunity for your child to get some face time in with the admissions rep that's actually going to be reading the application. So if a student is interested in a school and they can come to that college rep meeting, we encourage them to. So if you go to the homepage and you click on colleges, under research colleges, you click on college visits, and it'll populate a list of all of the schools that are coming. All right, and we're going to go down to UVM. So UVM is September 26th at 12:35. And what we're going to do is, because we're interested in applying to that school, we're going to click register now. So what that does is it puts the child's name into our list. So we have a list of the students that are going to be coming down for that meeting. If you click on view details, it's going to tell you the location, which generally is the College Resource Center, and the name of the rep. It's very important that students fill out a rep form, a college rep form, and let the teachers know 24 hours ahead of time so that teachers are aware that they're going to be missing class and attending this visit. I had a student last week and they couldn't attend because they had a math test. So what we did was we looked up the rep's name, and the student emailed the rep and said, listen, I really would have liked to come, but I had this exam. And then, we actually came up with a couple questions that the student could ask. So again, we ask that the students let the teachers know 24 hours ahead of time, and on that form, they're going to be getting the teacher's signature as well. Students will then receive an email reminder. Oh, you want to click on that? All right, that's the college rep pass right there. Thank you. So if a student cannot attend, they must click cancel on the registration page. And this is also important because the college reps get a list of the students that are coming, and we want to make sure it's the most updated list. So if they could go in 24 hours ahead of time and cancel if they cannot attend, we appreciate that. All right, so we suggest that students come in with prepared questions. If you go to page 11, we've put some questions on there that we encourage students to take a look at and maybe ask. In particular, I think the ones on internships are helpful. There's also, different acceptance rates for different schools for like nursing and engineering. That's a question that's in there as well. Standardized testing, is another question that comes up a lot that the student could ask. We just want to mention one last thing. We ask that students dress appropriately. This is not pajama day for that day. They come in with a prepared question, and then they follow up with a thank you email to that college rep. Usually they'll be able to grab a card. Last thing, we have a NACAC NCAC college fair, and that's going to be over 600 colleges, and that's offered online, and there's a link in your workbook. There's an October 15 date and a November 12th date. All right, Dave's going to do Common App. Thank you.
Okay, Common App. So I know a majority of you probably know what the Common App is, but briefly what the Common App is going to be a general application that students can fill out that can go off to hundreds and hundreds of schools. So when you're looking at your students list, a majority of those schools end up being Common App. And if we recommend if a student has multiple schools that they're applying to that are schools that are asking or do accept the Common App, that they do complete it. At this point, we've done a workshop with the students that focus solely on the Common Application, going through each section, recommending how to fill out the correct information. And if your student doesn't have a Common App yet, which I would say really a big majority of our seniors do, all you have to do is Google Common App. It's going to be the first website that comes up. The application, to start a username and password and create a profile is really quick, less than 5 minutes, and then they can actually get started on the Common App. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the body of the Common App, which you can see right behind me in the Common App tab. So the goal through this is to work down the left-hand side and get a green check mark. So there's a profile section, family, education, testing, activities, writing, and then there's the courses and grades. And to start off with the profile, it's really straightforward. They're going to be asking the student's name, address, some languages that they're spoken, obviously English and beyond English if there's multiple languages at home. One of the sections, geography and nationality, asks for the student's social security number. So that's something that the parents might need to ask or help with. I asked students in my workshop, do they know their social? One student raised their hand and said he could say it, and I said, do not say it out loud, that's for you. But very little number of my students know their social security, so that's something, if you are going to apply for the FAFSA, they're looking for you to put the social security on the Common App. The next tab beyond that is the family tab. And this is another section that our students normally need some help with. They're looking for information on the parents. So parents' name, occupation, if they attended college, the degree that they received, the year of graduation for that parent. So that, a lot of students obviously may know the school their parents attended. They don't know the year that they graduated. And then there's a section for their sibling. It's really quick, just name and age. Beyond that, the education tab. Now this one is, if you go to your workbook on page 14, there's really specific information we're looking for the students to do here. So they're going to ask about the attending high school. So the first thing we have them do when we pull up the Common App is add Algonquin as their attending high school. They're going to ask questions about when they entered, so August 2020. Is it a boarding school? Sometimes it feels like that, I'm sure, but no. The graduation date, which will be June 2024, and then for a majority of our kids, no change in progression. They ask if you are a transfer student, the other high school that you attended before Algonquin, if you took any college or university classes that you're planning to maybe submit to the college as part of your application. This part here, I always pull up with our students when we're doing a Common App review. They are looking for some real specific information like class size. So it should be 320. That is our senior class size currently. They ask about class rank. We do not offer a class rank, so you would click off none. GPA scale, we are going to click off 5.0 for that. And then the cumulative GPA, and this isn't a guess, this is what their exact GPA is. That's on Naviance. It's on the transcript that we deliver to the students during their workshop. From there, they're going to ask, is it a weighted or an unweighted GPA? The GPA that we provide for our students is the weighted, and that's what they should have clicked off here. Now, this section here is asking about their current schedule. So the schedule that they're asking for them to report is their semester 1 and semester 2 schedule. So they want to count up how many full year classes they're taking, how many first semester classes, and how many second semester classes. They're going to ask what is the scheduling system that we use, trimester, semesters. We're on a semester basis. And then they're going to start asking students to fill out the specific classes that they're taking this year. So there's a way that they want to list these classes down. We ask students to put them in by what's the most rigorous or what's the most challenging classes and have those listed first. So for example, if they're in AP classes, we would have them list AP classes, then maybe their full year honors courses, full year CP classes from there, then half year honors, half year CP. down the line, but we want them to kind of think through what's the most challenging, the most rigorous courses I'm taking this year, and have those listed at the top of the scheduling system, our scheduling list, and then move down from there. If a student is taking an AP Science, we want to make sure we list that class twice because there's the lab connected to it. So if it's AP Environmental Science, they'll list AP Environmental Science full year, and then they'll list it a second time as the lab component with that. I'm trying to think anything else to scheduling. If a student lists a class on their Common App and then they apply, all the time they'll come down, and this happens every single year for all the counselors. We'll have a student pop in after they applied and like, Mr. B, I want to switch out of my mechanical engineering class for semester 2. And I'll ask them, I said, well, did you list that class on your Common App? And they'll be like, yes. And I said, okay, well, that school that you applied to is expecting you to have that class for the second half of the year. They're expecting you to get have a grade listed with there. So now we have to go back and maybe email those colleges, ask permission to drop that class. So it's something that I definitely don't recommend doing. If the student is thinking about doing a schedule change or they're not fully settled on their second semester classes, have that conversation with your guidance counselor ahead of time before they're listed on Common App, before you end up applying, and then you do not have to go back to a school and ask permission to drop a class or send an email saying that I'm actually going to take a study hall instead of my environmental science class that I listed at some point. After scheduling, there's a section for honors. So this is academic honors. So times a student has been on our principal list or honors list or commended list, any department awards that they may have received, some of their National Honor Society inductions, so National Honor Society, National English Honor Society, kind of on down the list. So any academic honors that they have received and they want the school to know about, it can come into this section here. Usually community-based organizations, most of the students are going to have a 0 next to this. And down below is future plans. And this is it's a guess, right? So obviously not every single one of our students know if they're going to go on and get a PhD down the line or if they're going to make it to med school. But they want to know what's the most advanced degree that you're planning to get. It's not binding. And they want to know what potential career that you are in line to pursue. Okay. And those are the questions they're asking here. After this section is testing. So this is where students are going to be self-reporting their testing scores. So Andrea's kid put down a 1600 and you have the chance to list your ACT scores, your SAT scores, and your AP scores here. So this is your self-reporting, and you want to make sure if a school is asking you to follow up with your official score reports, that's coming from the testing companies. You can list future test dates down if you want to. So if you're planning to take a November test, obviously you don't have that score to report, you can let the college know that you will be taking a November test, that the scores will be coming down the line if that's something you're hoping to do. You can also list your AP scores here, your AP scores that you've taken previous. So if you have sophomore and junior AP scores that you want to list, and then if you're in current and senior AP classes, you don't have to put a score down next to that test because obviously you don't have it yet, but it's just signifying to the schools that you are currently planning to take that AP test in the future. Under the My Colleges section, which Mr. Lassard's going to review, there's a chance for you to signify to the school that, yes, I am going to be submitting test scores, or no, I'm going to be applying test optional, or I will not be submitting test scores. So for the individual colleges, you're going to have a chance to signify, yes, I will be submitting scores to this school, no, I will not be submitting scores to the other school. And that's how you're going to really signify between the individual schools what scores are going where. After testing, there's the activity section. Now, this is a chance for 10 activities to be listed down from freshman year all the way to senior year. So basically, this is the student's resume. The activities that can be on here are going to be anything from athletics to clubs to music to theater to part-time jobs, anything in the community, so community-based organizations you've been involved with, volunteer opportunities, things through your church. But this is a chance for you to show the college what you've been involved with beyond your academics. And there's a way that you want to make sure that, that these 10 activities are coming across. We ask the students to highlight their most important activities to them towards the top of the activities list. So if you were heavily involved in cross-country and you ended up being a captain and it was a 4-year sport for you, maybe that was one of the activities that end up towards the top of your list. When you are filling out this information, they want to know the time spent in cross-country, and a lot of kids are agonizing, like, how long was practice on February 13th? Like, you can't remember that. So I go through a ballpark number, 2 hours a day at practice, 5 days a week, come up with a reasonable number, and you can put that in your activities list. But you really want to stress that the activities that were the most important to you, the ones that you spent the most time with, kind of end up towards the top of your activities list. Maybe the one-off volunteer where you were doing Relay for Life, and which is a great activity to be involved with, but you only really donated one Saturday of your time, that might fall down towards the bottom of your activities list. They have arrow keys. So I ask my kids, get the 10 activities listed down, come down and talk to us, and then you can start moving up and down your activities list about maybe when we come to decide how to rank them, what was the most important. Should something kind of climb up your list, or maybe another activity fall towards the bottom. If a student is struggling to frame how this activity or what they did in this activity, that's a good way for parents to step in and sit and review the activity section with them. They ask for a brief description. It shouldn't be too wordy, but sometimes students have a hard time articulating what they did in this activity, and that's where mom and dad can really step in and help out. Beyond the activity section, there's the writing. Now, writing is where your student will be able to signify what personal essay they're choosing to do. So they have all the different tabs they can choose from. And then this is where they are going to copy and paste their 650 max word essay that they've been working on for months, that they've had multiple chances to review with an English teacher, or maybe the writing center, or another trusted adult that proofread it at this point. But this is where your personal college essay will be uploaded to. Okay? I always tell students, put it into this format, expand it so they can see how it's going to be read or looked at from the college level. Again, we have many resources at the high school for students who are working on their essays, English teachers, the guidance counselor, the Algonquin Writing Center. There's many different areas where they can get support with writing their essay, have someone that they trust proofread it before it actually gets on the Common App with their final draft. Beyond that is the additional information section. There's two parts to this. So there's a COVID section, and they're asking you if there is a specific incident related to COVID that you want to report to the schools. So we know every single one of our students and every single one of our families were impacted from COVID, especially with this graduating class. So they're not asking you to fill this out if you don't have something like extraordinary that you had to share with the college that was COVID related. So a huge majority of the students are not going to be putting anything down here. But if there was something that impacted your family or your students specifically, that really did have an impact that shows up in the application or in their transcript, and it was COVID related, there's a chance to explain it here. Anytime this is being filled out, I always tell the student, bring it down to your guidance counselor, let them have a look at it, and then we can make some suggestions if it should be shared or not as well, or how to word it. After the COVID section, there's another section that's for additional information. This is another section of the application that does not need to be filled out unless there is some additional information where there's no other part of the application to share. Maybe there was a death in the family and a student had a significant absence because of it, or there was a medical issue that you really feel like you need to explain to the school because that medical issue was impacted or impacting your academics at one point. If there is an additional information that you feel like you need to share or your student feels like they need to share, this is where it would go on the Common App. I would also recommend that they check in with their guidance counselor, share this information, ask for feedback on it. We've done the Common App thousands of times, so we'll be able to give some good feedback on should this be shared, how do we want to word it, before it actually gets to the schools. The last section is courses and grades. A majority of colleges or universities are not going to be asking for our students to self-report their academics, but there may be a few schools that do end up on this list. From here, if they are asking you to self-report your academics, you're going to say, yes, I can receive a copy of my transcripts for my official grades, and then you're going to go through that transcript and list your final grades starting in freshman year, okay? All your students received a copy of their unofficial transcript, which is the same exact thing as their official transcript, just stamped unofficial. So they do have access to all their grades. If they need help with this section, they can absolutely check in with their guidance counselor and we can help get their correct information on here. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's frustrating that they ask us to do this because we will be sending official transcripts to any school that your student applies, but there will be a few schools that might pop up that are asking for you to do this extra step. One thing, just a side note, a lot of students will come down and say, hey, Mr. B, can you go ahead and send my grades, or can you go ahead and send my letter of recommendation? I'm ready with my Common App. I'm just waiting on you to do your part with it. The students do not need to wait to submit the Common App before the guidance counselor sends in the grant transcripts or the recommendations, or wait for the teacher recommendations. As long as the student has their deadline listed on Naviance, and they send their application in before that deadline, we will make sure to make our deadlines, and we will get their everything sent in prior to that. So everything doesn't have to show up in one piece. The student's application can go early. They'll start a folder for them, and then as everything starts trickling in from the school side, the school will pull the file when it's completed with all the necessary information. Jason is going to come up now, and he's going to explain how to answer information related to the specific schools on Common App.
All right, so my name's Jason Lassard, and I'm going to be covering the second part of the Common Application. So first, I'm actually going to start with the dashboard. So the dashboard up here is really useful once you have created a list of all your schools. So when you did the college search and you've added all these schools to your list, the dashboard comes in really handy. So if you like to be organized, if you like Excel sheets, this is the tab for you. You want to look in here. So first things first, I can see, if we scroll down slightly, I can see that all the schools, it says application in progress. If I have sent the application, you'll get a green check and it will say completed. I can also see one school at the top has 2 pencils. So that means I have to submit not only the application, but the writing supplement for Carnegie Mellon as well. If I click show more details under that school, I can actually go through and see if there's college questions, if there's writing supplements. So there's 3 writing supplements on this part, and the Common App personal essay is required as well. But what we really want to look at is if we scroll to the top, and on the right side it says application requirements. So now it's going to give us this giant overview of all of the schools on our list all at once. It's going to show us all of the possible deadlines. And as we scroll to the right, we can see the application fees. We can see this Common App one. So it's like personal essay, and that if there's a green check that it requires it. If we're not sure what some of those letters mean, you can simply click the question mark. So right above Common App, you can see that question mark, and then you can see, if they require the courses and grades. That was the C and G. And then if we go across, so the supplements is a key one that you want to keep an eye on. If you see a green check there, you really want to make sure that you're on top of it and you know what supplements they need from you going forward. You can also see quickly here the test policy for each school, which is super useful. And then all the way to the right, you can see the recommendations. So again, if you click the question mark, you can see what those mean. But TE is a teacher evaluation, so it looks like they need 1 teacher evaluation for that school. OE is other evaluator. M-year is like the mid-year report, and then CR is the counselor recommendation. So you can see all those schools need a counselor recommendation. So this is a really great tool. Like I said, it's like you can use it before you start the process in the application, and then at the end, I think it's also great to look through, make sure you have all those green checks, and to make sure that all of your all of your applications have been submitted for all your schools. And then now we can go to my colleges. So Mr. Breglio went through, and he went through that common application. That's the general application that's going to go to all of the schools. These individual questions that are under each of the colleges are specific for the schools that you click on. So for instance, if we click on Stonehill and we scroll down, you can see first is this profile. It sort of gives you the overview of all the information, like the fees again, it's all right here, what they require, what you need, et cetera, and some general information. But if we scroll up, the questions with the green check mark, all of the schools are going to have a questions tab that has to be completed. This is their own thing, and they're going to ask some specific questions as it goes through. So all of them will ask almost every time, first question, how are you applying? Early decision, early action, regular decision. So this student went through. You're going to have to answer all of these questions. You can see this one gives you a little optional thing, and you can upload why Stonehill. If it's optional, I always recommend you do it. It's going to show interest, and you definitely want to tell this school why you are interested in Stonehill. That's something they 100% want to hear from you. And then if you go through, there's an academics one. You put in your major. Again, it's usually pretty straightforward questions. And then contacts, how did you first hear? So you can see as we go through this, this could literally take maybe 5 minutes for the majority, except for that uploading, to complete this whole section. If we go to family, and each college is different, so keep that in mind. So it's going to ask if anyone you know essentially has gone to Stonehill. Now, I picked one that was pretty straightforward and quick on purpose, because what happens for some of my students is they see this, they finish it, all the questions are super easy, Mr. Lassard, they focus on the Common App, and then it's 2 or 3 days before the deadline, and they're just gonna go through, do these questions in one night, and be done, submit, and they're good to go. That is not what I advise. I advise immediately looking at these questions for each college to see what is within them. So, for example, if we go to University of Wisconsin, and if we look at University of Wisconsin and we look at the questions at the beginning, very similar, very straightforward answers, but then there's this essay one. And if we click on that, all of a sudden, now they're asking us to write 650 words about, I believe, why you decided to apply. If I was doing this 2 or 3 nights before the deadline, I would be very stressed out, especially if you might have to do it 5 or 6 times as you're going through all these different colleges. So make sure you go through the questions ahead of time and you know what to expect. This is key, because a lot of times students don't look through this, and then they're thinking it's going to be really quick and easy, and sometimes it is, and sometimes you get 650-word essays in that question section. So make sure that is that you know about it ahead of time, and you take your time and you do a nice job for each school. Now, so assuming the question sections are done for each college, the next tab says Recommenders and FERPA. So we did last week, we met with all the students, and the students should have a Common App account, and they should have completed this section. So what I'm about to kind of go over should be completed, but if a student was absent, they're going to have to do this, and we can certainly meet with them and help if they have any questions. But you'll see the FERPA release authorization, and you can see this is the process that they follow. This student here that we're watching has already completed it. But FERPA gives you, or gives the student, the right to review confidential letters of recommendation provided as part of the application after you enroll. So after they've enrolled in the school and they're attending the school, then technically they have the right to those records and they could review those applications. So what we do is, after they read what the FERPA is, We suggest that all students waive those rights, because waiving those rights lets the college know that they do not intend to read the recommendations, which reassures colleges that the letters are candid and truthful. And some recommenders may decline to write a letter if you do not waive your rights. So we recommend everyone waives their rights. That's pretty much what everyone did last week. And they can save and close. They get a green check mark on the FERPA section. It's quick and easy. And now that part is done. But if we go to the right a little bit and scroll down, we can actually see some information after it's completed pop up. So you can see it requires one teacher evaluation. There's also an other recommender section. So many students have asked about this in the workshop, saying like, oh, I have someone outside of school writing a letter of recommendation. How do I add them to Naviance? You technically don't add them to Naviance. This is where you would do it. So your other recommender, so if you have maybe it's clergy or a coach or whatever it may be, but if you have someone writing, you can invite them here. So you can actually go ahead, you put in their email address, you put in their name, and then what you'll do is you'll end up kind of linking them to your Common App, and they can submit the letter on your behalf. But where it's tricky is once you invite them, their name will pop up for this school, but now they're only invited for this one school. So if you want them to be sending their letters to other schools, you actually have to go into another school, and you have to do this for each one. So you would go and click the FERPA under UTampa, and then you can see it saves all their information, but you have to drop it down. You have to assign that person to that school, and now they can go ahead and they'll be linked to that. You have to do that for each individual school as you go through. So if you have an outside person, make sure you do that. I want to make sure everyone in here knows that teachers are invited through Naviance, not Common App. So we're not inviting teachers through Common App. That is only through Naviance that they use. And same thing with counselors. You do not assign counselors through Common App. We use the Naviance system to send all the applications, all the transcripts and stuff. So now that the question section is done, the FERPA section is done, you could review, submit. It won't work because our Common App section is not complete, but if it was, it would give you the option to pay, and then you can submit, and then confetti flies on the screen, and it's a lot of fun. So, and then you're done. So that's for the University of Tampa. Just if we go back, if we remembered Carnegie Mellon and start at the top, you would be able to finish the questions, finish the FERPA, review and submit, and then you have a writing supplement on top of that. So you have to complete this on top of also submitting the application that was above. You have to submit twice. You have to finish this writing supplement. If there's writing supplements out there, students definitely need to know ahead of time what those writing supplements are. I think this is 3 different questions that they have to ask. I've seen other writing supplements where they have to read a passage from a book that they give, and then they have to respond to it. If it was me, I would be like, oh, I have to read the whole book. So that would stress it. Like, I'd want to know about these way ahead of time before going ahead and doing that. Now, one thing you'll notice, the FERPA was checked off for all of the schools, but the FERPA was not checked off, or is not checked off here for Carnegie Mellon, and that's for a specific reason. It's because when we decided to apply to Carnegie Mellon, we selected ED. So it's early decision, it's binding. If we get into Carnegie Mellon, we plan on attending and going to Carnegie Mellon. In order to finish the FERPA, you have to actually invite your parent in this section. So Carnegie Mellon, recommenders in FERPA, since we selected ED, it's only going to be able to submit once we invite a parent. So they'll put in your name, your email, you have to sign an agreement saying that you understand what ED means and that it's binding, and then you sign off on it. If a student is applying ED, definitely let your guidance counselor know. We want to know if you're applying ED. We also have to sign an agreement in order for everything to be sent. So make sure that they reach out, let us know that they're doing ED, and then we can go ahead and help them with that process. The last part that I'm going to do, and this is maybe a little bit backwards, but the FERPA section. So I walked through what it was and how to sign it. In order for students to sign it, on page 14 of your workbooks, it's 14 and 15, this is the process that they did. Now, I'm hopeful that everyone All the students, for the most part, have completed this, but this is the process that we went through. So very quickly, in the Common App, it only works if you add a college, because you need to have that My College tab there. You have to add Algonquin as a school in the education section, and then you sign the FERPA and Common App. Now, once that's a green check mark and that's good to go, you actually link the two accounts. So you log into your Naviance account, you click colleges I'm applying to, and in the upper right corner, you'll see something that's not there right now, but it will say match accounts. It's big in red. You match accounts, it asks you put in your Common App information, and then it's all set. It will link right up, and the two accounts will be matched. And that's something all students in our workshops completed that. So unless, again, if they were out, that they should see us, and we can help them along with that process. So now, Linda Hutchins is going to go through and talk about financial aid.
Good evening. So I like to just start off by saying that earlier Lisa Connery had gone through and said what the counselors are responsible for, and the students are responsible for, and the teachers are responsible for. So now I kind of have this section where we're going to need you to kind of help out here, and this is kind of your responsibility. So I am hoping that I can give you some really good information to help you plan and navigate through this financial aid process. So Good Teaching 101 tells us that we always want to start out our section with what we want you to remember most. So I'm going to go through some great resources that are going to help you navigate this process. So I'm going to start out, first of all, with the net price calculator, and then I'm going to go through this slide clockwise. So the net price calculator is on every single website, college website. And you can go on and you can put in your information, and it's going to tell you what you might be expected to pay at that school. So I like to talk about this. You have that huge sticker price, which is really overwhelming. You can fill in the net price calculator, and hopefully it's a little bit easier to see like what you might have to really pay. And again, it's a tool and it's an estimate, it's not a guarantee. The next one is the financial aid office. So you can ask them any questions about the forms or anything about the whole process. They're there to help you. They want to give you advice and help you with this process. They're also going to be processing the forms that you submit. They're going to be awarding you the financial aid package and then helping you if you are going to process any loan applications through their office. I'd just like to take a minute and just say, like we just went through and we're like, you need to be organized with the admissions, you need to have your deadlines, you need to know exactly what each school requires. They're all a little bit different. So is the financial aid side. So each school may have some different forms they want you to submit, and they're gonna all have their own deadlines. So as you are getting organized with the admission, you also need to be organized with the financial aid. So then I like to talk about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and I think they have a really great website called Paying for College. And why I bring this up is it has to do with what Mrs. Lisa Connery said earlier. It's a great way to start a conversation. So all of us in here had made a budget, we pay our mortgage, we take out a loan for a car, we understand what's happening with a mortgage and how our finances work. In senior year, a lot of them don't really realize what the implication of a $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 loan would be. And this site is going to help you show them in a monthly way so they can say, you want to rent, this is going to be this much money, and then you're going to have this much loans from college, and you're going to have to take out this much money every month to pay that off. So as you're looking at all of the different schools that you're applying to, and they might have their heart set on one, and it might be very expensive, this might be a tool to help you and help them understand really what that means. Does that mean living at home for a couple of years after college? Does it mean putting off graduate school because they are so in debt? Those are just conversations you have to have with them and help them understand that. And while I'm on the topic, we talked about this before, Mrs. Connery mentioned it already too, but having that honest conversation with them about what you're willing to help them with and then what they are going to need to cover also, so that they right now can have those realistic lists and they can also have those financial safeties that they want to go to, not just because they can get in, not just because it's affordable, but they can really research something that they want to go to. And so then in April, no matter what applications come out and acceptances, they are going to be excited for their next venture. The next one I'm going to talk about, and the last one, is MIFA, and I saved this one for last because it's Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, and it's to assist all Massachusetts residents with the financial aid process. And they have great resources on their website, and they have, when they're open for business, you can call them up and you can ask them your own specific questions too. So they are a great resource, and I highly recommend, if you have any questions, to reach out to them. So MIFA also has webinars that you can attend on lots of different topics. And I like to say they have them at lunchtime and they have them at dinner time. So whichever one works, they like to be accessible to everyone. And then MIFA is coming again to Algonquin on Wednesday, next Wednesday, September 27th. And they'll be here in the auditorium at 6:30. And I'm going to recommend that you all try to come to that, because I don't know if you've heard this or not, but the FAFSA has changed. 40 years, the FAFSA has been the same, and this year, the FAFSA is going to change. So they're going to need to help all of us work through that. The colleges are working through it just like you are, so we're all going to have to rely a little bit on MIFA to help us get through this. So now I'd like to just turn and talk a little bit about the cost of attending. And you can break this down as, for 1 year, how much does it cost to attend a school? And you can look at the direct and the indirect costs. So the direct cost is the bill that you're going to get and you're going to pay. It's your tuition, it's your room, it's your board, maybe some other expenses. That one is like kind of a given. Oh, I got to pay the tuition bill. But the indirect expenses, do not forget about those because they add up. I know in my house, the most expensive month of the year for us is August, and that is we pay the tuition bill, and then we also have to be like, what clothes do they need, what bedding, dorm room accessories, do they have some clubs that they're going to be in that have fees, are they going to bring the car up, do you have a parking fee for that, transportation, how far away are they, do you have to stay overnight when you take them? Those are all costs that really do start to add up. So when you're thinking about the cost of a school, don't forget to include the indirect costs. So now we're going to look at the financial aid formula. And I brought up cost of attendance because we take the cost of attendance and we subtract the student aid index. So this is a new term this year with the new FAFSA. It used to be called the expected family contribution. And then that is where you get your financial aid eligibility. And this is really what the colleges term your calculated need-based financial aid. And so how do colleges help you meet this need-based financial aid? Some schools are really proud and they're going to say, we are going to meet all of our incoming families 100% need-based financial aid. That's great. That's just some. Some of them are going to give you some ways to help you meet that need. But if there is a discrepancy, that is something that you are going to also have to pick up. So how do they help you? There's different kinds of aid. You can have grants and scholarships. It can be from the federal government or it can be directly from the institution. And this is the free money that you don't have to pay back, and this is what we all like to see on the aid package. I just want to point out one little thing just to kind of be aware of. When you get that aid package and you have a grant on that package, hopefully it will say 8 semesters, or this is what your student can expect or guarantee as long as they meet a certain GPA or something like that. And sometimes they'll have that on there, and then they might have another one on there. And so you need to make sure that you're on the same page with the school. Is this, if they don't mention the 8 semesters or the 4 years, is this something you're going to give every year, or is this just something you're giving that first year? Just so you're very clear on going forward. And then we have loans, student loans, parent loans. Loans definitely can help you finance college, but they definitely need to be paid back. So I'm not really going to go into finances for you right now, but just remember the interest rates. Is the loan subsidized, or is the loan unsubsidized? Subsidized loans mean that you are going to go through college, and then when you get out, you have a job, you're going to start paying them back, and the interest accrues when you start paying them back. Unsubsidized loan means that when you take out the loan and you sign for it, the interest starts accruing right away. And that can be a significant amount of money is the difference. Then we have work study. And they might put this on the financial aid award, and they'll say $1,000 or $15,000 or $150, yeah, or $1,500 of work study. And you're like, oh, okay, that's great. That's not meaning they have a job already prepared for your child when they get to college. That means when they get to college, and they can find a job if they want, and then as they're working, they're going to pay them. So they're going to pay directly to the student while they're working. So that doesn't mean that that's not going to come off the bill. So it's good, it's helpful, but I just want you to be aware of that fact that when the tuition bill comes, it's not going to have that $1,000 off because the money would have gone directly to your child. So once again, we're going to look at that financial aid formula. Cost of attendance minus student aid index equals the financial aid eligibility. But how do they determine the student aid index? And that is going to be determined based on the financial forms that you fill out. The most common form is the FAFSA. FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And yes, we all refer to it as FAFSA, so I had to look up what that actually meant because I couldn't remember. So this is the one you will fill out for all of the schools. And it's free, so you should never have to pay for the FAFSA. Oops, sorry. Again, it's usually available October 1st, but this year, because it's new, it is not coming out until December. And we're not even exactly sure what day in December, but that is what they're telling us. In the past, the FAFSA has usually been highly income-driven. Along with the FAFSA, some of the private schools are going to ask you to fill out the CSS profile. And this, again, you're going to be able to find through the College Board. So just like you would log in to your account and sign up for the SATs, this time you're going to log in and you're going to fill out the CSS profile, pay for it, and send it to the schools that require it. This CSS profile is very asset-driven. So a lot of the private schools that want to know like the income and the assets, and they will reconfigure your student aid index, or as we have known in the past, the expected family contribution, and then they will give you a new one, and then that will be what determines how much aid they will give you too. So once you filled out your financial aid, your child has filled out their applications later in the spring, or depending on when you have your deadlines, you're going to get your acceptances, and then you're going to get a financial aid award package. Hopefully you're going to have lots of acceptances, and you're going to go through the different packages to see like which one makes sense overall for your family. And I just want to tell you two things. One, yes, it is okay to call up the financial aid office and try to negotiate a little bit. So if your child has one school that they absolutely really want to attend, it's their #1 school, but it might not have as much financial aid as maybe a couple of the other ones, you are more than welcome to call up and say to them, this is my child's #1 school, and we really want to make this happen, but, you know, doesn't really meet exactly what we need it to meet. Can you work with us? It does not hurt to ask. They can say yes or no. The other thing is if you are filling out your forms and then something changes based on the information that you've given them, there is an appeals process, and you can call them and ask them that, or you can look on the website and they will tell you what forms to fill out, and then they will reevaluate your student aid index based on the new information that you provided. So I'd just like to go into the new FAFSA kind of quickly. Again, the colleges are really trying to wrap their brain around this too. So it's really going to be a college by college decision as far as financial aid this year. It's going to be a streamlined process, which is going to be great for everyone. There's only going to be 50 questions instead of 100, and everything is going to be electronically taken from the IRS. Some of you may have already heard this, but while the FAFSA will ask if you have other children that are in college at this time, but the new analysis will not take that adjustment into account. So again, Colleges, some of them are saying they will, some of them are saying they are not. We're just going to have to take it school by school. And then they have said too that it's normally income-driven in the past, but they will have some asset questions on the FAFSA going forward. Final thoughts about financial aid. Financial aid needs to be completed every year, and we have a really robust scholarship program at Algonquin for Northborough and Southborough. We have about 50 organizations that give senior scholarships, and we will let the seniors know more about that in January after we kind of get through this process first. So now I'm going to hand it back off to Mrs. Lisa Connery, and she can do the closing remarks, and then we'll go into the question and answers. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Linda, and thank you to all the counselors for the great sharing, all that great information. Before we jump over to the Q&A, I'll just touch base on the NCAA that's at the last page in your workbook. If by chance you have a student who is thinking about participating in Division I or Division II athletics in college, they are going to have to go through the eligibility process, all right? So they will have to go to the NCAA website. They'll have to create an account, and they will have to go through that process and request a transcript. We get notified that a student has identified Algonquin as their high school, and then we go in and we will electronically load their transcript. And so how it works is, right now, they'll go in, they'll create their account, they'll request their transcript, we'll submit their transcript. After reviewing the transcript, the NCAA will kind of give them initial approval, initial eligibility. Students do need to submit test scores through the test center, all right? And then they'll get their initial eligibility that allows them to kind of work with the coaches, right? And then eventually they're going to have to graduate, and then they'll submit a final transcript, and they'll get final approval to participate in Division I and Division II athletics, all right? If you have specific questions regarding NCAA or Division I, Division II athletics, feel free to reach out to your student's counselor, and they can help you out with that. All right, so we've given you a lot of information, and everybody's probably chomping at the bit to run home and start asking their child a bunch of questions, right? Did you do this? Have you done that? Have you done this? Have you done that? I'm going to come back to my recommendation that I think I made in May, and that my recommendation would be to find a time, right, each week to sit down as a family and review where your student is at in the process, all right? We really don't want your student shutting down and, having this kind of become a battle. So if every night they come home after a long day of school and extracurriculars, they sit down to have a little bite of dinner, and the first question is, did you get that? Have you proofed your essay yet? Where are you at with your applications? That can make for a very long day. So I would say, maybe Saturday morning, set a time and say, okay, listen, on Saturday morning, we're going to sit down. We're going to review where we're at in the process so we have a good plan so we can utilize some of the time over the weekend to get some things done. And then the rest of the week, we're just going to kind of do our week and move on. All right, so that's my suggestion to help make this process kind of go smoothly and have enjoyable dinners during the week, right? Okay, so we're going to turn it over for questions and answers. I'm going to run around with the wireless mic here, and Linda's going to hop up here and help me out.
So I've already submitted or started the FAFSA forms, and they're actually looking for 2021 income information. I'm just wondering, so it sounds to me like really need to stop where I am and wait till the December. And the work that I've done so far, does that work its way into the next iteration of FAFSA?
So FAFSA is like prior. So for this year, you're going to submit the 2022. So I would hold off because the new FAFSA is going to come out in December.
I have a question about SAT scores. If your child did 2 different SAT tests, do you take the best for both for English and math from each one, and that's what you submit? Or do you?
Yes, so some schools will super score, and so you can send both of them in, and they will take the highest two. It depends on the school. There are a couple schools that they do not want to super score. And then again, I mean, they get so many applications in. They really want, to do the best job for your student too. So I would send in both scores if one is higher, and then they're going to look through it. And in that initial read, they're going to put the SAT scores in there, and they'll put the highest ones in. Or they'll take the higher of the two that you submit and put those in there.
So my daughter's counselor is Ms. Mulcahy, and she very generously offered to write letters over the summer. If we got her all the materials she wanted by the date in July, can we assume it's all done?
Yeah, Ms. Mulcahy has written a whole bunch of letters. God bless her. Thank her, right? Thank you, Kate. And she actually has left them with Cindy. All right, so Cindy has access to all of that information, and then she'll be doing this, submitting everything. But Kate worked really hard on all of those letters.
Hi, I just have a follow-up question on the SAT score. So just wanted to be sure that if the student has taken the SAT 3 times, for example, right, they have to submit all the scores, or they can submit only the highest one?
No, when you go in to submit, you can submit the highest, you can submit all of them, and they'll take the highest two out of those. And it's just one time that you can do it.
Hi, I had a question about applying with a major or like going as an undecided. Any guidance on that? Like when you apply to colleges, what if the student is not decided on his major?
Yeah, so I think what you're asking is like your child doesn't really know what they want to go into right now, and you're not sure if they should go undecided or if they should go ahead and pick a major that they might want to have. And so I think, that's a really good question. Colleges know that most kids are going to change their mind. Like, most of them don't go in and like, oh, some do, and they're all set, and that's great. But most of them change their mind multiple times. And so I'm going to encourage you, though, if they're looking at a major that's very competitive, like some schools are business, some engineering, some computer science. If they're thinking that is something that they want to do, and they're only nursing, forgot that one, and you may have to apply as a freshman, and that's the way you're going to get into that school, I would definitely have a conversation with your guidance counselor, and if that is something they might want to do, they might want to put that down. A lot of times, like UMass Amherst is like, what's your second choice, and you can put it in like that. But really, truthfully, so many students, like 60% and above, always change their mind. They know this. They're just kind of trying to like figure out, like they don't want to have everyone think they want to go into accounting. They want to balance it out too.
Do we have other questions?
Just real quick, in reference to the statement you made with the FAFSA, they're not going to consider a second student that's in college in terms of financial aid. Is just looking for clarification on that statement.
So that is what the student aid that's what the student aid index is going to be. It's going to be calculated a little different this year. But again, there are multiple schools that have said at this time, even though this is happening, we are still going to decide, we are still going to consider that. So this is new to colleges too. So I encourage you, it's going to be a school by school decision. But the new student aid index is not going to take into account multiple students, which if you have one or more students in school, I know that is very upsetting to hear.
For the letter of recommendations, if student is applying to multiple colleges, do you have to request teachers? So they have to submit, teachers have to submit for multiple colleges, or is it once automatically sent to the colleges?
So it depends on how they're applying, right? So the teacher is going to submit the letter to the schools that the student has requested. So if we did a general request for a teacher, they're going to go in and they're going to submit their letter to all of the schools for the student, all the schools that accept letters of recommendations, right? If the student did a specific request, then the teacher is going to go in and only submit their letter to those designated schools. Okay? And they do that all through Naviance. It's an easy screen to submit everything electronically.
I had a question regarding scholarships. So I was reading here, it says that the application for scholarships are due in early spring. So the student is not going to know until later in the year about the scholarships. I mean, if they want to factor in that into their decision, how is it done?
Are you talking about the local scholarship program that we
Yes.
have? So the good thing is we have this great local scholarship program with about 50 organizations, and most of them, they're going to give you a letter saying how you're going to get the money, but a lot of them will give that to you in May. We have a student awards night, and a lot of them will actually hand the student the check that night.
Right, so
And
you'll
so-
have to make your decision prior to receiving any of those scholarships. And a lot of the local scholarships are given just for 1 year, right? So it'd be like a set amount. It might be like $1,000 for just this year. So some of the local scholarships, I would probably look at that as more like icing on the cake. You know, so if you did get that additional funds, right, and they handed that check to the student, but you'll have to make your decision before they even are awarded those scholarships. Yeah, there's national scholarships, and you can do, through Naviance, you can do a national scholarship search. You can put in different criteria, and it will bring up national scholarships for you. A lot of our students have, of course, because the applicant pool is smaller, you know, they fare a little better with the local scholarships, but you certainly can go through that process. And employers, you know, your employer might have a scholarship for students, so you might want to ask that and complete that, because that's always a good source for a scholarship as well. Did someone raise their hand over here?
And on the web page, on page 17 for the financial aid, we've listed a couple of websites that you can look at for scholarships too.
Oh, did you pull that up, Andrea? Yeah. Is that on Naviance? Yes. Do you want to show it really quick? So we're under colleges, right? And then there was a scholarship tab, and you just do like that's where you can do the scholarship search. And also the local scholarships will be under there as well, and we'll send out an email that outlines, you know, how to apply for the scholarships, how to find them, what's available, and deadlines and everything. And that'll all come out in sometime in January.
Thanks. So, quick question about the recommendations from the teachers. If a student has asked multiple teachers for recommendations, how does the student determine which one they might use for general or which one they might use for a specific school if they have no idea what's being said? And I get that, I understand that, but how would they make that decision? Does the guidance counselor have the ability to see the recommendation and make a suggestion to the student?
No, we wouldn't. We could definitely have a conversation with your child, but it's normally it's normally a core teacher, and it's probably someone that knows them best, and they will have filled out information for the teacher, and they can have a conversation with the teacher. But at that point, they're going to pick one teacher as the general. It'll go to everyone, and then the other teachers can go to the specific ones. So when you go into the letters of recommendation, you're going to be able to see like how many schools only require one. And if all of your schools require one, but they allow more than one, you can make both of them general and they'll both go. So I would just like to say, if your child has asked a teacher for a recommendation and the teacher has said yes, you have no fear that it is not going to be positive. It will be positive and it will be in their favor. Otherwise, they would not have said yes. And I think, too, it also depends on the major. So if they're going into science or a STEM field, they might want to have their science or math teacher be the primary. And again, if they're going into like pre-law or something, they might have their social studies teacher be, or English teacher be the primary.
So quick question about the financial aid with the unknown December. But aren't some of the ED and EA decisions released in December? So is it safe to assume you're not going to get any financial aid because it hasn't even been submitted yet?
So I ran around for the last week asking all the colleges that came this exact same question about ED, and this is what I found out. Some of the schools are going to delay the financial packages until after the FAFSA, until they get it. So I encourage you, as soon as the FAFSA comes out in December, to fill it out. And other schools that require the CSS profile, they are going to give you an estimate. And then once they get the FAFSA, they are going to recalculate it. So again, just for this 1 year, next year it's going to go back to October 1st. That doesn't help us all here today, but just for this 1 year, we just have to kind of like wait and see and ask the questions to the colleges.
So there's a date on each application of when the information is due. If a student is applying for rolling admissions, the date is set way out. How do they get their information submitted sooner then for those?
So if one of their applications is rolling, so whenever their first application is due, and that's when we would send all of that information to all of the schools on their list. And again, we go through and we check Naviance on October 15th, November 1st, November 15th, December 1st, before we go into break, January 1st, January 15th, February 1st, March 1st, and make sure that everything has been sent from the teachers and everything. And I just wanted to say one more thing about that ED. You can, if you go ED and they want you to sign the contract and it comes out that the financial aid doesn't come through, that is one of the reasons why you can get out of an ED agreement.
Do we have any other questions? Yes. Do you want the microphone for this one?
Hi, this is probably a question that does not apply to many people. Does ED work internationally?
ED work internationally?
Yeah. Is this a binding agreement that my son is not going to go to any university worldwide? North America, US only,
So it is a binding agreement, and basically you're committing to that school, saying that regardless of where any other college is located in the world, you're committing to that school. And if your child is admitted, you will withdraw all other applications from all other schools. Yeah, that's the expectation, that you're committing to that school. If they commit to you, you're committing to them. Yes. No, he's just asking about if he has to withdraw his international applications. So the expectation is yes. Yes. Other questions? Yes.
Earlier during the talk, you have mentioned about that in the fall time, maybe it's a good time for the student to visit the college. But I found out that many of the colleges do not offer any information session or the college visit on the weekend. The student would have to maybe miss the class during the weekday if they're interested. How would the guidance counselor recommend or comment about that?
So, I mean, we understand that students, he's talking about visits, and so depending on the situation, if there's travel involved, right, and the schedule of the individual colleges, right, and their campuses, we understand that students need to, go and visit the schools, all right? So if you do go and visit, we'll just ask that you, call in to let us know that you are taking your student to visit, right? And that they'll be excused that day. Okay. And we like it when the parents do that because some of our kids get a little senioritis and all of a sudden they start going on campus visits, right? Because they think that's an acceptable reason to miss school, right? So we do appreciate it when the parents call them in.
We have one more more question in the back.
Yeah, I apologize to be redundant about that, but I'm not clear on this. The SAT scores, that is there a binding to submit all 3 scores, or they can choose just to submit one score which is the highest? Or they
Right.
have to submit all 3?
Nope, you can choose either one. So with the price, you can either pick one score to send, or you can send all of them on a score report, and then they can pick and choose them.
Okay. Great questions. All right, so this is probably not the end of all the questions that you might have with this process, so please feel free to reach out to your student's counselor. They're more than happy to help you. And again, we look forward to working with you and helping you and your student through this process. Thanks so much for coming tonight, and have a nice weekend.